A few weeks ago, we ran a question here. What if Operation Barbarossa had begun 6 weeks earlier? The tanks rolled, Moscow fell, and our conclusion was that this broke the Soviet Union. Case closed, we thought. Then the comments came in, by the hundreds, and they landed. They took that neat little conclusion apart, argument by argument. And you were right to. Napoleon took Moscow and still lost everything, you wrote. The Red Army's tanks were already being built far behind the Urals, you reminded us. A capital is not the same as a state. That was the heart of it, and it's true. So today we flip the question completely around. We hand the Wehrmacht what it never got, the Kremlin, and test everything against 4 points. A government already gone, factories no one could reach anymore, the will of a regime that burned whole regions rather than surrender, and a lesson 100 years older than this war.
But be fair to the other side, especially now. Let's make the case for collapse as strong as we possibly can. Moscow was the political heart of the Soviet state. Here Stalin sat, here the High Command convened, and from here the threads ran out to every corner of the realm, a true nerve center, and far more than a mere symbol. Like the spokes of a wheel, the country's great railway lines converged on this single city, the link between the front at Leningrad in the north and Ukraine in the south. Picture the headlines in London, in Washington, in Tokyo, all of them asking whether the Colossus had stood on feet of clay after all. Sounds like a fatal blow, doesn't it? Let's play it out. In early December 1941, the Wehrmacht came within 25 kilometers of the city's heart. Through their field glasses, scouts could make out the towers of the Kremlin, close enough to touch. Let's grant them even that final step and let them march onto Red Square. And whom do they find waiting? No one who matters, not a living soul, because the groundwork had been laid even earlier. By the 15th of October, the State Defense Committee had issued Secret Resolution number 801. The General Staff, the Naval Command, the entire diplomatic corps, the real government, all of it, eastward. The destination was Kuibyshev, today's Samara, 1,000 kilometers up the Volga. Deep underground, a bunker had already been dug for Stalin, a second capital held in reserve, prepared weeks ahead of the danger. The British historian Roderick Braithwaite put it plainly. The Soviet state had long since planned for the loss of Moscow.
One man stayed anyway: Stalin.
Not out of sheer defiance, a bunker on the Volga was waiting in case things fell apart. But as long as he could, he stayed. On the 7th of November, with German guns within earshot, he held a parade on Red Square, and the soldiers marched straight to the front. It was theatre, but theatre that worked, and everyone was watching. Because 3 weeks earlier, the city had already lost its nerve once. On the 16th of October, the metro failed to open at all for the first time ever. It had been wired for demolition, and hundreds of thousands fled east in panic. If even that did not tear the state apart, whatever could? Picture it. The Wehrmacht seizes the Kremlin and closes on empty air. A capital is a dot on a map. A state is a machine of people, files, and chains of command. And that machine sat 1,000 kilometers farther east, still running, still unmoved, day after day.
That leaves the question of the weapons.
Where were they built? Here comes perhaps the most incredible story of the entire war, and it's all true. As German tanks pushed east, the Soviet Union took its own industry apart and loaded it onto the rails in the middle of the war. More than 1,500 major plants, entire steelworks, tank factories, aircraft halls rolled east into the Urals, into Siberia, into Central Asia, and millions of workers went with them, bag and baggage. In many places, production restarted before the roofs were up. Men poured steel under the open sky in the Siberian frost. picture that cold. Whole cities rose from the steppe in months. Chelyabinsk became Tankograd, Tank City, and churned out the T-34 faster than the Wehrmacht could destroy it at the front. Now think what that means. From 1942 on, all tank and aircraft production lay beyond German reach. The fall of Moscow would have cost a capital, and not a single decisive factory.
And yet, here is the most honest objection, the one that carried our old thesis too: the railways. Moscow was the central hub, and its loss would have severed the north-south lines between the fronts, straight across. That part is true, and there's no trick in it. But a severed aorta only kills when the body has a single artery, and the Soviet Union had far more than one. Even in peacetime, its planners had laid bypass lines east of the capital, half from mistrust, half from caution. Add the sheer, endless depth of the land, stretching every supply line thinner and thinner, and the new industrial base in the east brought its own rail lines. The Red Army's logistics would have limped for months, but the front would have bent, not broken. It's that simple. What remains is what can't be measured in tons: the will. Would the system have held without its heart? Honestly? This is the one place where I start to brood, where it gets tight. Yes, the Secret Service's machinery of coercion would have smothered any collapse in the bud, instantly. Yes, German extermination policy first kindled the patriotism that finally defeated it. And yes, there were the fresh Siberian divisions Stalin threw west, after Richard Sorge, his master spy in Tokyo, reported that Japan would not attack in the east. A fallen Moscow would have unleashed centrifugal forces too. In Ukraine, the Baltics, the Caucasus, the memory of Stalin's terror ran deep, and many a nationalist would have sensed his hour. The war would have turned uglier, more chaotic, bloodier. But decided? No, not for a moment. Even the German dream, the line from Arkhangelsk to Astrakhan, left behind a land so vast that a wounded state could have vanished into it and fought on, without a trace. Because all of this had happened before. On the 14th of September 1812, Napoleon's Grande Armée marched into Moscow. Triumph on paper. Except the city was empty. Of some 275,000 inhabitants, only a few thousand remained. That same night, fires broke out, set, they say, on the orders of the Russian governor. 2/3 of Moscow sank into ash and embers. Napoleon held the capital, and what he held was ruins. For an entire month he waited for a surrender that simply never came. Of the more than 600,000 men who had marched into Russia, barely 100,000 returned. Taking the capital had not been the victory at all, it had been the trap. And in 1941, the Soviet Union was even better prepared for precisely this loss than the Tsarist Empire had once been. Far, far better. It had Kuibyshev, it had the Urals, it had a plan, and this time, a method behind it. Play it out to the end. After the Kremlin falls, 1942 simply begins, and the war grinds on. On the Eastern Front, on average, there stood a single German soldier every 6 kilometers. Do the math. An army meant to hold half a continent is thin everywhere and strong nowhere. And then, slowly, came the hand of the Allies. But late. Through Lend-Lease, the United States sent supplies worth over $11 billion, and above all, over 400,000 trucks. 7 of every 10 Soviet trucks came in the end from the West. On wheels from Detroit, the Red Army rolled back to Berlin. Crazy but true. Yet most of that only flowed from 1943 onward. The bare survival of those first 2 years was carried by the relocated factories and the depth of the land alone. A fallen Moscow would not have stemmed that tide. So, back to the beginning.
Was the fall of Moscow the fall of the Soviet Union? After everything, no. Gravely wounded, yes. Defeated, no. A modern industrial state is not its central station, nor its government quarter. The Soviet Union's true weapon was never this one city. It was the space that swallowed armies whole, the factories that fled east and kept building, and a regime that would sooner burn than kneel. Napoleon learned that before a burning city. The Wehrmacht would have learned it before the very same Kremlin, the hard way. One question remains. If this war could not be won in Moscow, then where could it be won at all?